Hello, I'm Lucky and I'm gonna try to do a couple of videos on Houdini. It's been a while since I used it and I wanted to try and refresh myself on the basics and figure out record in case anyone else finds this useful. Okay, so here's Houdini. Um, and I'm gonna try just tweening this time. I'm gonna try to figure out as many ways as I can how to get something to move around. So I'm going to put down a geometry node, which is just using tab and then typing geo, which will give you a couple options. And this is just a basic one with nothing in it. And then I'm going to put a test object. So I'm going to put big head. There's a couple test objects. So if you type in test, you'll see a good selection. So I'm going to just use this one. So let's see, how do I tween? There's a couple options. So you've got the transform node, which will let you move it around by command clicking or alt clicking on translate and going somewhere else, command clicking it again, changing the value, which should let you tween it. So now it moves back and forth. Now that's one way. Another way is using the same node and using some expressions. So if I type in $, you'll get a bunch of options. So I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use time. Is time an expression? Let's find out. Yes, it is. Okay, so that moves. I'm just going to disable real-time mode. On the bottom left, I'm going to select the little box that says global animation options. I'm just going to set that to stop at 64. Maybe the frame rate can be 30. Wait, that makes no sense. Let's make it 60 for 30. So it's like 2 seconds long. Okay. Yeah, okay, so it moves. So now time is a expression. So if you click on translate now once from time, you'll see it changes into a number. So you can actually preview where it is at any point. Now it's 2.5. So let me just double check here. So you've got okay, yeah, I forgot to update. So if you go FPS 30 and you actually apply it, and you've got a start and then frame of 60, it should go 0, 1, and almost to 2. That's because it's 160, so it's almost a 2. So if I go, actually, it's gonna get more complicated, so I'll leave this alone. But yeah, basically it's 0 to 2 over 0 to 60 frames. So that's another way you can do it. Another way I can do it is with some actual easing on it. So if I go transform, and at 0 it's keyed, at 60 it's keyed, and I'm gonna move it to again, same as before. But if I select on the top of the window the triangle and split this into 2, so split pane top to bottom, and then the bottom one I right click and go inspectors, geometry, no sorry, which one's the animation one? Animation editor? Yeah, okay, it's animation editor. You can actually see the ease of this tween, which is just generic ease in and out. So if I select both of these controls, and if I put the linear ease on, you'll have no easing on it. And if I select one of the dials, I can add like a nice ease out. Now you'll notice the red one has all this stuff on, and it's actually changing from like being at the bottom to being all the way up here. But there's also the blue and the green one. That's because you've got all these ones as well. You've got the Y and the Z being keyed. So if I just right click on those ones and go delete channels, they'll be gone. So you've only got the X to deal with, which is much easier to deal with. So that's using the transform node, and so that you don't need to like guess around as to what expression to use. If you were to use expressions, you can click on the little question mark, and that should bring up the help section. So if I go and type in, I don't know, let's go with time. No, let's go $T, which is what I just used. Oh, no results. Let's go expressions. How many S's is there in expression? Let's go global. There it is. Heat script global variables. You'll see all the options of what they mean. So for example, you can use F for frame instead of T, or you can use a combination of F over frame rate. So there's FPS in here as well. So I can go like current frame over the FPS of the animation, which I will in a second maybe. Let's find out. Let's try it another way. Let's not use this. Let's use a more code way of doing it. Let's open up an attribute wrangle, which is now the code way of doing things. So with the attribute wrangle, you can do pretty much the same thing you can do with a transform. Now with the attribute wrangle, you've got several ways of moving something. The cleanest you can do is using the p variable, which is at p, which is a vector. So it has x, y, z. So vector typically is, so if I type in vector blah equals 0, 0, 0, you can basically think of 0, 0, 0 as x, y, z. So vector has three, I'm not sure why I call them elements. So like blah x is basically what the first 0 is, blah y will be the second, blah z the last one. So if I go at p, which is your position, it's a built-in variable. So if I go p.x equals 1, it's going to shift every single point this model has into 1. And you can actually see that here. So if I go into the panels and make a new geometry panel, you can see before the p.x was, several different variables. But if I click on it now, you'll see they're all 1. So how would you move it if this force sets everything to 1? Well, you don't really set it, you add it. So you can actually say plus equals 1, which would make it go from here to here by basically saying for all these numbers, add 1 to them. All right, so you can animate it this way. So if I go plus equals, and in this case, because we're now using vex expressions, you will need to use @ variables instead of $ ones. So if I go at time, for example, you're doing the exact same thing you were doing before over here, except you're doing it with code. Now, it seems more hassle, but realistically, if you want to do a lot of animation, not just a single object, this will be a much easier way to do things because you can really micromanage everything. So with the with this, if you want to actually do more controlled animation, like for example, let's say you want the start position and end position, so I can go float start position equals 0 and float end equals 2. So now you have start and end, which are floats. So basically that means that you can have 2.1, 2.5, whatever. You can add after the 2. If this was a different type of variable, then it wouldn't let you do that. Like if it was an int, it will get only allowed to be, like, you can only use it doing 2, 3, 4. So if it was a int my int and I call it 3.2, it's gonna round itself off to 3. So float is the usual number used for variables. Anyway, so let's see. You want to move it from 0 to 2. Let's see. So you've got a start and an end. So if I make a difference between the two, so if I go float difference equals open bracket and position minus start position. Okay, so that's the difference. By the way, at any point, you can kind of debug it yourself, so you don't need to wait until everything's done. So you can just go, oh, let me just check what difference is. You can go add my new variable, which you've just made, equals difference. Or to make it even more straight to the point, you go difference equals difference. You'll see this just popped up over here. It actually shows you the difference right there. So you can debug things as you're doing things. Now, there's many built-in variables in Vex, but there are not, at this point at least, not all of them are built in. So if I go back to that help file, so if I go into, was it global variables, you can see on the left side is the expression version, which is what you are using here. Oh, sorry, here. And the right side is the add version, which is what you will be using in Vex. And you can see you've got frame, but you don't have a lot of the, a lot of these don't have alternatives yet, which they probably will at some point. Time seems to have it. So in the meantime, I can say I can work around it. So if you go float, I don't know, let's say I want to get the total frames. So let's say I want to animate from 0 to 2 over 60. So if I go total frames equals 60, which I know is a fact, then I can work this way. Except if something changes in this file, this might, like, it's not good to have hard color variables. So if I go instead ch for channel, f for float, open bracket totals frames, and then I click on the little plus icon here, it's going to make you a blank number. So if over here, because this is basically H script, I'd go, let's find out what they are, was it number frames? Yeah, let's go with that. Let's go, if I go number frames, yeah, 60. So this way, if I change the length to this timeline, this is going to be updated. So that's good. So the difference. So I'm trying to go from 0 to 2 over 60. Let's use a percent. So let's find percent. So let's make a declaration that a percent of advancement is the frame you're on right now divided by the total frames. Let me just debug it. Yeah, so you can see here, this goes from 0 to 1. More or less. It goes from 0.16 because you're starting at 1 instead of 0. So now you get the percent. So if I just multiply the end, this difference by the percent, you will end up with 0 to 2 over a percent. So let me just increase the x value by the difference. And that should animate from 0 to 2. And just so that we make sure it works if the start position is not 0, so I'm going to add start position plus this. So that also offsets by the start. And just to make a visual of what I mean, Let's make this a channel float to start. And go. Let's make it 0 to 2. But now if I go 1 to 2, it's gonna start at 1. If I can make it minus 20, which should start at all the way minus 20 to 2 or a 1. Yeah, so now you've got essentially the same as this, but a lot cleaner. It only does one function, and you can also control it a lot more. You can make the code even cleaner because these are 3 floats, so they're the exact same type of variable. So instead of using float, you can change this to a comma. So comma start position, comma end position. So now you reduce the code even more. Let's get rid of the debugging because that's not really needed. And that's all the code you need. Oh, now, yeah, but you don't want to. But you want to have some easing, for example. So if you want to have some easing with this way of working, you can pretty easily do that. So if I just go into Google and I type in, I don't know, easing formulas. They're pretty universal. Doesn't matter what language you're using. They're the exact same formulas everywhere. So C# is pretty similar to Vex or C. So I'm just gonna click on this one. Doesn't really matter because they're gonna look almost identical. So if I go GitHub, you'll sometimes see some easing equations. Yeah, these are all easing equations. So let's say I want to do exponential ease out. So I'm gonna go look for expo. This one uses this one gets more complicated because it requires a start and end position here. Let's try something more simple. Yeah, okay, this might be a lot cleaner. All right. This has sub-functions, so I'm going to try to avoid sub-functions. Just because I want to make it as clean as I can. Nope. Nope. Expo. Oh, there we go. Oh, let's see if I can clean it up anyway. I know this has several things in it. I'm just going to copy this code. All right, so you can make functions in Vex as well. It's not as... I didn't think we could before, but it's a lot simpler than I thought it was going to be. So if I go and make a function, I need to know what kind of function it is. So it needs to return something. So for example, you can make a float, give me number, which is a function. And that will return 5. So now if I say at my thing equals give me number. Oh, it's a function, so I need to actually execute it as a function. Yep, gives me 5. Now you can also pass a variable in it. So if I want to pass, if I call it, give me a number multiplied, just so I have some visual differentials. So if I want to get a number and multiply, but I also want it multiplied. So like, let's say I want to multiply by 5. I will need to pass that as a float. So I go float by how much. So, and here I would just say return 5 times by how much. So now my thing is multiplied by 5 because it's taking the 5, passing it here, and then multiplying that. So Just gonna take this. I don't need any of this other stuff, so it already says it's a float, so that's good. Start and end. I've already got my start and end. I don't really need any of this, so I'm just gonna delete all that. I just need the value. I don't need the end. I don't need the start. I don't need the end multiplied. I don't need the start because this is already doing that. So just gonna delete that. Delete that. All right. So and you've got matf.pow, which is I'm pretty sure Unity's way of doing things. So in terms of like power, cosine, all those functions, those are the built-in names for them. I think here I can just type in pow. Yep, just typed in pow. So that should do it. Let's see how that works. So this is a generic ease out function. I can apply it to the percent directly. So instead of multiplying it by any of the big numbers, I can just say float eased percent equals that ease we made, and then I pass in the percent, and then I swap percent with ease percent, see if that works. There we go. Now it's eased out. Let me just clean this up a little bit. I don't need that. I don't need this. Cool. So now you got the same thing as before, but now it's easing. And you can pretty much apply it to all the other ones as well. Now this is the nerdy way of working. You can do this in other ways, of course, like you can use a .NET, a solver, which is, in which case I would need to pin this here, then go in my solver, and then add a Rango, and then add p plus equals, I don't know, 0.1, which just makes it move. Now this works here and not in the other one because a .NET on every single frame, it checks what's in the last frame. So if it was 0 in the first frame, and then on the second frame I hit this, it adds 0.1, and then on the next frame, it checks the previous frame. So if in the previous frame was 0.1, it goes into 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. So this basically iterates, and it's extremely useful, but it also requires some simulation. It's totally fine here because it's barely anything, but I try to avoid this if I can when I can just use transforms or wrangles because it's overkill, really. I don't know, what other ways can I tween? Can I use a rigid body? Okay, let's go .network. And I don't know. Let's make a. This is totally useless, but let's make a rigid body solver. And import the object with a packed object. And using the first context geometry. Let's see if this is even going to work. Okay, wow, it shows up, so that's good. Oh, I need to actually pack the object in the first place. Okay. Let's just check if it works. Let me hit a wind force. Let's add some velocity. There we go. All right, well, that moved it. So that's one way to make a move. Not the best way of making a move because you can't even control it. But hey, it did move. What else? I think that's about it, really. There's other ways to do things, but obviously you can't control them as easily. So with a transform, you can completely control it. With a Rango, you can control it, but you need to know a lot more code. But you can pretty much make one look like the other. So if I go into my wrangle, sorry, if I go into my transform and then I hover over my wrangle, I can see the difference in motion. Now this is the one that's been eased out, so this has a very exponential ease. You can actually visualize it. So if I go in, I think GSAP has a good one. So if I go GSAP using visualizer, and I select there it is. So if I go into the expo, you can actually, this is what it looks like. So if I actually copy that here, which kind of looks like that, but sharper. Oh, right, my bad. So the start and end are different here. So if I go 0 to 2 instead. And also, this starts at 1, whereas that one starts at 0. So I'm going to say frame +1. Oh no, sorry, frame -1. There we go. So they start at the same place. Let me just try to nudge it. There we go. If you do it enough, you'll eventually get there. There we go. Okay. There we go. So that's what these looks like. So yeah, I'm not sure this was helpful to anyone or... Yeah. But I wanted to at least mess around and see what other ways of transforming there is apart from just the default of using keys. Yeah, let me know if it was of any help to anyone. If you want me to make any more, I can. Cool. Thanks for your time.